Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar sponsored by HJ International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. I'm Thomas Walsh, and it's my great honor to be serving as president of this great institution, which is now in its 50th year since having been founded in 1975 by our true parents. We're nearing the end of 2025, moving into a new year. We're closing soon our fall semester for this academic year and looking forward to the year to come. We cannot help but remember prayerfully our beloved true mother, who at this moment is in detention in Korea, and our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go out to her as we all seek to offer our support, encouragement, praying for her health, her well-being, her security, and that liberation will come soon in God's providence. So thank you for being here today. We have a very important program tonight that's dealing with true parents in America, a chronology from 1965 to 2025. Our main speaker is none other than Dr. Michael Mickler, distinguished professor of historical studies here at HJI, member of the first graduating class of HJI. I'm going to read a little bit from the flyer that was sent out because it contains very good content. Dr. Mickler will be joined by three of his colleagues who worked with him carefully on this project. Dr. Franco Famularo, who's chair of the board of trustees of HJI and recently became adjunct instructor here on our faculty. Mr. Michael McDevitt, who is the director of the H.J. East Garden Museum, and Ms. Tal Zorer, executive assistant to President Dunkley at HS Family Fed USA. True Parents, 60 years of ministry in the U.S. demonstrates unparalleled devotion, dedication, and consistency. The 600-page chronology that we will learn about tonight is the most complete documentation to date of the 9,326 days they spent in the United States. It includes full coverage of true parents' words, their sermons, speeches, commentaries, proclamations, and addresses, their spiritual and pastoral leadership, and initiatives related to their vision of social and cultural transformation. The editorial team, who we will hear from this evening shortly, worked for more than 5 years collecting and verifying entries in what was truly a labor of love. For us as unificationists, true parents are the bearers of new truth and embodiments of that truth. As such, they not only convey divine teachings, but also provide a model to follow. Someone mentioned to me that tonight, here, as we observe in North America, there's a super moon. So maybe that is symbolic that we are going to be looking at the chronology of the moons this evening. We're delighted. This is a great project. It's been at work for a long time. I know several of these speakers met with True Mother a year or two ago to update her on this great enterprise. I'm proud to now welcome Dr. Mickler. He will introduce his colleagues after he goes through his PowerPoint. Then I'll return to moderate the Q&A. Dr. Mickler will take approximately 20 minutes, and each of his colleagues will take approximately 5 or 6 minutes. It's going to be a great program. Thank you for joining us this evening. Dr. Mickler, We're very happy you're with us tonight. Thank you not only for being here, but the incredible work that you did with your team in putting this chronology together. Dr. Michael Mickler.
Thanks so much, Dr. Walsh, and thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. We're really proud and happy to share the results of our work, which began in 2020 and still is not absolutely finished. I think what we'll be doing this evening, there's several levels to it. At one level, we'll be reporting on a research project. That's kind of what these faculty forums are roundtables are about for faculty at HJI to report on their research projects. So at one level, it'll be a report on a research project, a 5.5 year research project. At another level, it'll be a report on the book, which is the fruit or result of that. And it is a large text, True Parents in America. Let me get the camera right here, a chronology. It's a 600-page volume, and I'll be describing some of that to you. But at the third level, and the most important level, I think, is to really put the focus on True Parents Ministry in America. And I hope that will be the what we'll have a chance to discuss later on. So I do have a PowerPoint that I prepared. I'm going to kind of go through the nuts and bolts of the volume with you, and then my colleagues, my editorial colleagues, will have a chance to add their perspectives as well. And I will introduce each of them in turn. So I'm just going to share screen here and slideshow. Okay. So this is our reflections as editors on this project. It really is a 60-year ministry. I guess in Asia, that's a life cycle. So I think 60 is very appropriate. And we want to focus on the theme of preserving our story and preserving True Parents' story. So this is one of the images in the volume. It was taken at Yosemite National Park on June 13th, 1984, which was shortly before True Father entered Danbury Correctional Institution that year, and they had traveled out. It's one of 190 photos in the volume, each of which is captioned with the date. Some of them are iconic photos that most people have seen. Some of them are less familiar that people haven't seen. Just to mention something about the background of the project, it's been a joint project of the Sung Hak Institute of History, USA, which is responsible for preserving our heritage. The Hyojeong East Garden Museum, which Michael McDevitt is the director of, which preserves material directly relevant to True Parents, and the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. So each of these entities were responsible for the project. As I said before, it's been a 5.5 year project, initially initiated by Dr. Kyun Kim in 2020. The church in Korea and Japan had produced chronologies, and he was somewhat a little bit disappointed that we had not produced a chronology yet in the US, a published chronology. So he initiated this project. Dr. Chung Shik Yang inherited the project when he came in, and the project was completed under Reverend Damian Dunkley this year for publication. So it's extended through 3 major administrations. The 600 page book documents True Parents in the United States and Canada. We have a section on Canada from True Parents' arrival, initial arrival, True Father's arrival on February 12, 1965, through True Mother's last visit, which concluded this past January 29, 2025. The book itself, this isn't It is kind of a quasi launch, but we're not trying to market necessarily. It is available at the Family Fed bookstore for $55. That's the site you can go to. We tried to keep the price as reasonable as possible for those that are interested to obtain a copy for themselves. Um, and our editorial team and supporters, we actually had the four of us as editors. In addition, Dr. Frank Kaufman was one of our editors, and Mr. Larry Moffat as well. And I'll say something about their contributions to the volume in due course. We had the privilege, or the editorial team had the privilege to present the volume to True Mother, actually, I believe in 2023, which was the end of phase one. And here is Dr. Kim in the left-hand corner presenting the volume and True Mother signing it. In the middle are members of the team, Mr. McDevitt, Dr. Kim, Dr. Kaufman, Ms. Zorer, and Dr. Famularo. In the top right, Mother offered guidance to the team in their continuing work. The lower left is when the team arrived, those that were in Korea arrived back. We gathered in the New Yorker hotel with Dr. Kim in the lobby, and lower right, we had a little celebration dinner in the Butcher Block restaurant there in the New Yorker hotel. So the question, why a chronology? I'm kind of repeating some of what Dr. Walsh just said. Unificationists understand Myung Moon and Hak Ja Han to be the true parents of humankind. And for unificationists, they are the bearers of new truth and the embodiments of that truth. As such, they not only convey divine teachings, but also provide a model to follow. Unificationists are inspired to study their course and learn from their example. Number one. Number two, as Dr. Walsh is stealing my thunder here. There's 60 years of ministry in the United States, evidence unparalleled devotion, dedication, and consistency. Whether they were tired, misunderstood, or what time of day it was, were secondary matters. The mission and people of the United States was primary. So for unificationists, they came from Korea with love. In this respect, compiling a chronology is a testimony to this and an expression of appreciation. So again, the content of the chronology does reflect the major emphases of True Parents' work in America. And probably the core emphasis was proclaiming God's word. And so the chronology includes the date, title, and location of every recorded sermon that True Parents delivered, every speech delivered by them during public speaking tours, all recorded commentaries delivered as part of daily Hundo gatherings for reading and study, all proclamations, and all conference addresses are in this chronology. A second major emphasis of their work has to do with spiritual and pastoral leadership. And the chronology documents the dates and locations of all holy grounds, all marriage blessings officiated by True Parents, all holy day celebrations, director and leaders meetings, workshops and training sessions in which True Parents participated, visits to centers in the field, prayer and fishing conditions, tournaments, declarations of milestones in the providence, and the initiation of new movement traditions. A final emphasis that is reflected in the chronology are initiatives consistent with True Parents' vision of social and cultural transformation. And so the chronology covers dates and locations of True Parents' work with scientists, religious leaders, civic officials, academics, artists, journalists, and others, their establishment of organizations and federations dedicated to world peace, and the development of enterprises dedicated to the equalization of technology and alleviation of world hunger. The chronology does have limitations, certain limitations. It includes more than 7,500 entries. However, it falls far short of documenting True Parents' daily activities, which began before 5 a.m. and extended well past midnight. And here I want to quote a passage from Scripture, the book of John. Uh, in fact, is the last words of the Gospel according to John in 21:25, an account of Jesus's ministry. It says, "There were also many other things which Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written." Well, the same, I think, could be said of True Parents. However, their public ministry extended decades longer. Jesus's public ministry is recorded to have gone for 3 years. True Parents, 60 years in America would be 20 times that. So the chronology is not a history. It's not a narrative of True Parents' life and ministry, but it is foundational for historical accounts that will ensue in the future. It's a solid record and a reference work. In terms of organization, the chronology is True Parents centric. Every entry centers on an event or activities in which True Parents directly participated. And the book itself is organized by decade. And we found that each decade had a distinctive character. And so the 60s and the 1960s were the First and Second World Tours, the blessing of holy grounds and the extension of the marriage blessing beyond Korea. In the 70s, True Parents shifted their ministry to the United States and became highly visible, and I might say controversial. In 1980s, True Parents expanded their ability to exert influence in the United States. The Washington Times was a good example of that, and opposed communism and contributed to the victory in the Cold War. In the 1990s, True Parents declared their messianic identity and globalized the blessing. In the first decade of the 2000s, they proclaimed Chung-il-guk and worked to revitalize the United Nations. And then in the 2010s and 2020s, True Mother carried forth True Parents Global Ministry. In terms of sources that we use to get our entries, they included Unification Church and Family Federation periodicals. Some of these are periodicals of record, such as Unification News, Today's World, True Peace more recently. We're very grateful for the editors and those that contributed to those periodicals. In the earlier days, New Age Frontiers of Miss Kim, New Hope News, etc., etc. Books were scoured websites, speech collections, online and print chronologies that are out there, travel and visitor records. The East Garden log was an invaluable source for our work that Mr. McDevitt provided. Personal journals, eyewitness accounts, and non-unification materials, books, investigative reports, and newspaper accounts. So that's a kind of basic list of the sources that we worked with. And we do have a as yet unpublished source document, which identifies the sources for each entry. So every entry in the chronology is documented with a source document that we will eventually publish, probably online. It'll tell exactly where that entry came from, and also if there are any problems with the entry. In other words, some of the source material makes mistakes. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they're contradictory. So we have brief explanations as to why, in certain instances, we regarded that entry as verifiable and acceptable. And in some cases, we indicated why that particular source was not reliable and not utilized. So that source document will be of use as well. The volume contains 7 appendices. We include a glossary of unification terms. These would be terms that are generally not familiar to people, also terms in the Korean language. So the glossary is there to help readers. We have a list of unification acronyms. Our movement, like many movements, has numerous acronyms: HJI, UPF, FFWPU. So we have a complete list of acronyms. The third appendice is empirical. We calculated the total days in the United States that true parents spent by year and by decade. As Dr. Walsh noted, the total number of days that true parents spent in the United States from 65 to 25 was 9,326. And that represents about 43% of the days in overall between 1965 and 2025. So a substantial amount in the United States. We also tracked the number of days and duration of days of true parents' visits to select United States cities. And we selected the top 12 and tracked the numbers there. We excluded East Garden from that list. Holy grounds established by true parents in the United States. 55 were established in the 1965 tour. One at Belvedere was established in 1973. These are all documented. We even calculated the number of miles covered in the 1965 tour. That was done by Michael McDevitt. So if you have any questions about that, we had a couple of numbers there. You can ask him about that when he presents. Blessings officiated by true parents in the United States are all documented. There were 24 of them. True parents speaking tours in the United States we documented the theme of each of these tours, the speech titles, the city in which they occurred, and the date. There are 28 separate speaking tours that true parents conducted in the United States during this period. And finally, True Parents in Canada, a chronology 65 to 22, which was assembled by Dr. Famularo for our volume, and he will speak to that. Just to conclude with some of the analytics that to me are interesting. The chronology concludes complete documentation of true parents' arrivals and departures from the United States. Therefore, it is possible to calculate the number of days they spent in the United States by year, by decade, and in total over 6 decades, because we have definitive information about when they arrived in the U.S. and when they departed, so we could calculate the days. It also is possible to calculate the percentage of days per year, per decade, and over the duration of their United States ministry that they spent in the United States. So just to highlight a few of that, some of that data, true parents spent over 300 days in the United States in the years 1973, 1974, 1976, 1977, 79, 1980, 82, 84, and 85. In the 1970s and 80s, they spent approximately 2/3 of their time in the United States. The total then is 9,326 from 65 to 25, or nearly 43% of their time in the United States. And this is a chart of each of those years and the number of days that true parents spent in the United States in those years. So, and this is in the chronology. So you can see each of the years there that are shown. Then we looked at visits to specific locations. We did not include East Garden and Belvedere where true parents resided, but we included the others. And so in terms of the top 12 in number, you see the New Yorker Hotel, Washington, D.C., Barrytown, Las Vegas, Alaska, Hawaii, etc. And it was interesting to contrast the number of specific visits to these locations, and then the duration of the visits to the location. So when you look at the duration of the visits, Alaska occupied a lot of True Parents' time, including Kodiak, Anchorage, and other cities there. Uh, Vegas next, then Hawaii, Washington, D.C., Gloucester, New Yorker Hotel, and Manhattan Center, etc. So, so this would be the analytics of days spent. And and that will conclude my presentation of nuts and bolts of this project. Um, and now I think, Dr. Walsh, we will proceed to my colleagues who will share from their perspective about the chronology. And I would like to say a word about each of them as they come to present about their contributions to the volume.
Very good, Dr. Mickler. Excellent presentation. And Youngsun, you can bring on the three commentators to get and to appear together with Dr. Mickler.
Well, we can start with Franco. Yeah. Okay.
There we
All
are.
right. So I think that Dr. Famularo will be the first to offer his commentary. And as Dr. Ward said, he is chair of our HJI Board of Trustees. He's also president of the Universal Peace Federation in Canada, past president of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in Canada. He possesses a doctorate in ministry from UTS. We were UTS then. And he is a historian in his own right, having written his master thesis at UTS on a history of the Unification Church in Canada, which has circulated widely. Dr. Famularo is multilingual. He speaks English, French, Italian, and German, and is the most cosmopolitan of the editors. He kept us honest when we were becoming too USA centric. So, Dr. Famularo, please share your comments.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mickler, Dr. Walsh. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I see that some people are staying up late at night or early in the morning, wherever you are. So thank you for joining us. And I think that Dr. Mickler did an excellent job of presenting the foundations of all this and how this came together. So I just wanted to share a few points because I intended to speak for about 3 hours, but I only have 6 or 7 minutes. And to begin with, this was a very intensive effort, and it was a labor of love, which means that, we weren't paid for this project. This came out of our hearts, and because of COVID, we thought we had more time on our hands. Little did we know that the COVID period would actually make us even busier than we ever were. And so we met from August 2020 to 23, basically every Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And currently we meet once a month as chronologies. They really never end. So you saw the photos that Dr. Mickler presented. Interestingly, when we presented the first version of the book to True Mother on May 6th, 2023, we met her at 8 a.m. on Saturday, consistent with our regular meeting time. I don't know if God had a hand with that, but I'm sure he did. I'd like to mention that the skeleton of the chronology goes back to 2010 when Dr. Frank Kaufman, Larry Moffat, and myself worked on producing a chronology for an extended biography of True Father's life. And this was a project that met some complications after True Father ascended. Now, I've been involved in compiling the history of the Canadian Church since 1985. I personally kept the diary since I joined. not as intensively now as I did in the early days, but we kept personal diaries and also a diary for our church centers, which I recall we did while I was in Europe for the 6 years. And Dr. Mickler mentioned about sourcing. I want to emphasize that this was an important part of the effort, and some are asking already in the chat whether this will be available. Yes, all the links are there so that you can check the sources yourself in the future. This is still in the works. And I think that the first step when writing or recording history is to create a chronology, because that serves as the basis for any other narrative. I was talking with Taj Hamad, Dr. Taj Hamad, president of UPF, yesterday, and he was reminiscing about uh, Sheikh Kuftaro being taught by True Father at East Garden, or the Muslims that came and met with True Father in the early 90s. One of them, our good friend Dr. Habash from Syria, I believe, and he did the 40 days workshop then. And I could pull out the chronology and say, well, this is the date that it happened. And this is the time that Father spent with Sheikh Kuftaro, the Grand Mufti of Syria, and taught him for 3 days. So I created a chronology for the Canadian Church before I wrote the 300-page history of the Unification Church in Canada from 65 to 91. And I continue compiling a chronology, and I did some work on this yesterday for 2025, because if we don't, all of our story will be lost. So there's an appendix in the True Parents in America. Of course, Canada's part of the North American continent. I'm grateful that that addition could be made. You know, True Parents were in Canada for only 48 days from 1965 to 2006. Compared to the United States, that's very little, you know, at 9,326 days. So it's very small in comparison. And I was an eyewitness at most of these visits with True Parents, although I wasn't there in 1965 or in 1971, 76, and 77. But I have a good connection with some of the people that were there and could compile from their recollections, their diaries, their notes, what happened at that time. And through this research, I discovered things that I never knew before, like a postcard that True Father wrote from Montreal in 1965 with the post stamp on it, or the hotel that he stayed in Ottawa in 1965, the floor, the room number. All these things are actually scrolled away somewhere, and you can find them if you do research. But from the visits from 1987, I closely participated and wasn't just an observer. I was attending the True Parents during these times, fishing with them, touring with them, driving with them. And so we recorded everything with as much detail as we could, right down to what they ate, right? So some of the sisters compiled the menu, so it was quite amazing. So finally, I'd like to say I encourage every country where True Parents spent even one day to compile a chronology, at the very least, of their time there, so that uh, their record of their time on earth will not be lost. We know that this is a big headache for people who study the life of Jesus. They know hardly anything because there is no record, but now we do. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor to participate in this effort. And I hope you not only buy the book, but that you'll do your own chronologies and you'll add all those things that you think are missing in this chronology and let us know. We'll have a portal or an email where you can send us your comments, questions, corrections, and more. So we'll be manning that into the sphere of the spiritual world, so don't worry.
Thank you, Franco, so much, Dr. Famularo. I want to mention my motto. I've been plowing the field of unification history since 1980, and I came across a quotation from True Father that has been my sort of motto in that work. And he said at one time, the work of documentation is just as important as the work of propagation. The work of documentation is just as important as the work of proclamation. So both are, of course, necessary, and there wouldn't be anything without propagation, there wouldn't be anything to document. But I want to say that documentation is also propagation. If not to this generation, then to generations to come. And so I want to emphasize that point. Mr. Michael McDevitt will speak next, and he is director of the Hyojong East Garden Museum and executive property manager of historic Belvedere and East Garden sites. He served as chief security officer for True Parents for nearly 40 years and traveled to the iconic venues connected to their speaking tours, Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium, Washington Monument, as well as on their travels throughout the United States, Gloucester, Alaska, Hawaii, Las Vegas. So I believe Mr. McDevitt has had as much direct contact with True Parents as any American, and he has testified eloquently to them on many occasions. He also kept precise records of their comings and goings, especially from East Garden, which added immeasurably to this chronology. And Mr. McDevitt is also a graduate student at HJI. So, Mr. McDevitt, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mickler and Dr. Franco and Dr. Walsh. And I see Dr. Ward and many friends out there. You know, it's been a real honor. As Franco said, we met twice a week and we did a lot of work on the side, you know, preparing all this information. And all this time I'm with True Parents, I never thought we would come to a point where we would be working on a project like this. But as we worked on it, I realized how important it is. And as they've testified, that the history begins with it's an assembly of information, and the information has to be accurate. And the chronology provides a baseline for a religious leader's life and ministry. So that's what we have here. And I just wanted to share my gratitude for being a part of this. I first heard about the project around 2020. I heard, you know, we had formed the Sanak Institute, and then I heard Dr. Kim had initiated this project, and I called him and said, you know, I think I might be able to help with this. So he said, yeah, call Dr. Mickler. So I called Mike and I said, you know, we're sitting on a treasure trove of information here at East Garden that nobody knows about. And so I sent him some samples of, you know, some chronology, some addendums. And so here we are. We formed the team, and then it was very tedious. It took a long time, but it was very rewarding. And I'm just so grateful that I could be a part of this. I want to share just a couple of anecdotes, a couple of nuggets of information. The chronology at this point, using the sourcing document, I calculated has 7,565 entries. That's 7,565 individual things True Parents have done in America, and where they did it, who they were with many times. And that all came from the sourcing document. Now, you know, one thing about that they didn't share is I think we went almost a whole year until we realized it was that man up north there in Canada Franco said, we've really got to pay attention to sourcing this as scholars. And I'm not a scholar, I'm a student, as you know better than I do. So that took almost a year to catch up, right? To bring, I think we were into the 80s, the late 80s at that point. So we brought up all the source information and then moved forward. From that point forward, nothing was entered without the source. So of those 7,565 entries, about 1/3 of the information came from East Garden. And I wanted to share just in the beginning, when I came here in 1974, as Dr. Mickler said, I served as Troop Parents Security Chief. So I have personal knowledge and experience based in East Garden and throughout the country and throughout the world. Father was so security conscious in the beginning, he told us not to write anything down and not to speak about his schedule. So we're young men, right, in our 20s. We're so frightened we're not going to speak about what they're doing. And we realized like this doesn't work. We've got to share information. So we developed a system of keeping a logbook at the gates of East Garden and Belvedere and the control room. We logged everybody that came in and out, including troop parents and all the guests. And at the end, at the end of the shift, the security worked on an 8-hour shifts. We'd summarize that into a shift supervisor's report. And the key information was troop parents in residence, or are they out expected to return, or were they out of town? So the oncoming shift knows what to expect. So one of those logbooks is about that thick, and this went on for 40 years. And we collected these. They ended up over at the Belvedere basement in 6 full file cabinets, and we did a clean out over there in 2014. We almost threw it all away, which is what often happens to records, which is part of my testimony here. And I thought, no, we better bring them over to East Garden. You never know. And here we are. And this project was initiated in 2020. So my number 2 guy here, Mike Chapman, I said, why don't you get a high-speed scanner and we'll start scanning these things? Because in 40 bank boxes of records with multiple volumes is not so easy to deal with them. So he scanned 50,000 documents in about 4 months back in 2021. And now, and he organized them very, very methodically. If you give me a date, I can tell you in 30 seconds whether troop parents were here or not. And if they weren't here, I know pretty much where they were based on everything else. So that's a credit to the security staff. Very diligent here at East Garden. And also we had our operational files. Every time there was a public event, Father would speak, with the UPF 2005 inaugural tour and so many events. We had operational files that, we had to keep track of where they were speaking and the contracts and the floor plans and all these things, all these details, which I'm good at, the logistical planning and follow up and then paying attention so that troop parents can get to where they need to go to do their function, that kind of thing. So those security records we've made available. They've been declassified and they've been digitized and they've been made available for this project. I don't know if they'll be available to the public, but they've been an invaluable source of information. And some of the sisters kept diaries here, which also contributed. There are 3 people that I wanted to mention, honorable mention contributors to this project when they heard we were doing this. I see Donna there from Alaska. Many of you have been to Alaska fishing with troop parents in Kodiak. There's one Japanese brother, Mr. Inoue, who was working so hard. He was all over the place with troop parents when he was there. He also kept his own diary very meticulously. And the brother in Kona, Hawaii, Mr. Momose, did the same thing. And when they heard about this project, they produced the enormous spreadsheet explaining accurately the arrival, the departure, where Father fished, who he fished with, any special guests like Jerry Falwell or any workshops going on. So they offered those to this part of the East Garden archives now, digital archives from Kona and Kodiak. They are the source of most of the entries regarding those 2 providentially important locations. The third one is, if some of you remember in the early 70s when Belvedere was bought, Mr. Bobby Wilson, who is a good friend of mine, he was a property manager and so much more. He was involved in all of these property acquisitions. but he was also a meticulous journaler. And his journals all had, he used a journal that were predated. And he had an intimately close relationship with true parents back in those days. And to give you an example, you know, in the 73, Father made many trips to Washington to meet senators and congressmen, and he driving back and forth. He'd arrive back at Belvedere around 1 a.m. in the morning, and he had so much energy he had to do something. So he wanted to lay carpet. This is true father. He laid carpet in the Belvedere main house with Bobby, and Bobby's recording all this stuff at the end of the day. These kind of intimate details that he has in his journals. He also collected all the news articles about anything that had to do with Belvedere, East Garden, Barrytown, New Yorker. He collected all the news articles, and he was a photographer. He's donating. I just spoke to him yesterday. He's donating his collection to the East Garden Museum. So the importance of keeping records and collections. And just one more, I'll conclude here. There was a change of leadership in HSA back in, I don't want to say who it was, but more than 10 years ago. Somebody cleaned out a room at 43rd Street. It was a repository with bank boxes of records, and they brought it up to the Belvedere main house. Didn't say anything to anybody. It was in the main first floor, ground floor there. And those ended up in the basement. They almost went in the dumpster also. And I said, no, let's bring them over to East Garden and inspect what they are. Turns out these are all the records from the 1972, 73, and 74 Day of Hope tours with all the details and all the banquet invitations and so much information. As you know, Neil Sloan was such a good manager and a record keeper, and all the way up to 1982, those records. So we have those in our collection also. And so I can't stress enough the importance of keeping records. And if you have, as you look at the chronology, and if you can identify any event or entry that you were there and you have some personal testimony, we would welcome those kind of stories for round two, the sequel of this faculty roundtable, which I'm sure we'll do again. It's been a real honor. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it back to Dr. Mickler. It's been a real joy to work with you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Likewise, absolutely. We were always energized during this. I don't know about you guys, but I never felt weary of this task. It was always so life-giving. That was my experience. I would mention at East Garden, one thing that Mr. McDevitt did not mention is that frequently people would come there for the morning breakfast meeting, and they'd come with project proposals and all kinds of reports. And a lot of them were nicely prepared in glossy folders and things like that. As I understand it, there is about 40 trunks in EG of all of those proposals that were presented during those breakfast meetings to true parents. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but that is being gone through now, and that will add, I think, quite a bit to our knowledge.
We are inventorying those as we speak.
Yes.
Each binder represents a meeting with true parents. I'm in the museum house now, and that dining room is right next to me, either there or the new house dining room. Each binder represents a presentation to true parents, and there's hundreds of them. They're all neatly organized now, and we're in the process of inventorying them. Thanks for bringing that up. There's so many stories.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, I'd like to introduce Ms. Tal Zorer. She is executive assistant to the president of Family Fed USA for more than 10 years. As such, she is a master of multitasking and communication. She contributed that talent to our chronology, keeping us on point, maintaining the Google Docs and spreadsheets, and being a liaison to our graphic designer, Jonathan Gullery. She has a law degree. I don't know whether she wants me to say this or not, but she does have a law degree from Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And she possesses a sharp and penetrating mind with great attention to detail. She also helped diffuse toxic masculinity whenever it arose in our discussions, which occasionally happened. And she added a needed feminine perspective to our work. So, Tal, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Um, I knew kind of what Mike McDevitt is gonna end a little bit on, so I was gonna piggyback. But actually, what I wanted to tell all of you that you got a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to be on our meetings. Like, there's full of stories, and it was absolute pleasure. Of course, it was an honor to be part of this project, but it was really an absolute pleasure. Actually, by far, it's one of my favorite projects. I mean, I kind of said to myself, it's only second to actually welcome True Mother in America. If we work closer to Mother, but the second best is really working on this chronology. And I agree, I didn't feel fatigued or tired of it. And actually, that's why it's still ongoing. That's why we're meeting on a monthly basis and kind of revisiting things and open to more things. I really, really learned a lot. It actually gave me an entirely new perspective. My interest in history, I mean, you'd be surprised, it's a law degree, but actually my real love is history and archaeology. But it's really biblical, it's old. But because of this chronology, it totally gave me this perspective. Wait, we're making history as we go, and how important it is to really capture it. And I agree, some of the questions are, what about this or what about that? We really stayed to not a narrative, but a chronology. We really stayed true parent-centric. And it really opened my mind to how vast True Parents Ministry was. And it definitely opened my deeper understanding of Mother's own role. Like, she's there all the time. When you look through the chronology, you kind of understand the unity of true parents, how they work together, how Mother is always there, Father is always there, and when they're separated, they're, with all those multitudes of times when each of them is on a separate location, but they keep in touch. And I just have kind of one anecdote of how the chronology is actually already kind of is useful. It's a useful tool, but it's not just research for posterity. In the last few months, we all know Mother he's been in a challenging legal situation. And at some point from World Mission Headquarters, they asked me for a list of all the public events or public speaking engagements of True Mother from the years of, I think it was 2008 to 2024, something like that. And all I needed to do is go to the chronology, harvest those dates and of course take out, just pick out the relevant events that they asked me to do. And it's real. It was very helpful. It was informative, and it's already been used, and it's so relevant. It's not just an amorphic, for a few research. It already has been used for a very important point to really elucidate and support materials when we were asked. The other thing I kind of just wanted to say from like a little bit of the Family Federation or the headquarters. So we've created under Dr. Kim the History Institute for USA. Of course, True Mother inaugurated the H.J. Eastgarden Museum, but at headquarters as Family Federation, and especially these days, we probably all know if you're in regular meetings, it's highly providential. It's very current. It's very running. But at the same time, there is a growing awareness of the need of preservation of our story. The raid on our facilities in Korea kind of opened our eyes a little bit. Some of even our younger second gen, usually they don't think of history. Suddenly they're like, wait, we can be, this history, our story, our narrative can be taken away, can be erased. And it's actually it brought to the forefront the need of this preservation of story. So really, when I knew how McDevitt would end, I really wanted to go straight to there, how important it is to keep all the records. And everybody knows, even in Israel, that I never threw a piece of paper. It was like highly, who knows, you'll need it one day. So I totally am that. Like, don't throw anything. The fact that there's so much more information is already so appealing. But I do believe it's definitely like Dr. Mickler was saying, it's witnessing for the future. It's a foundation for this narrative and the greater history. And I can't stress enough. Actually, our story is rooted in true parents. That's why we started the chronology first with true parents. But the movement and the greater movement, it's all part of the greater story. So from this root, we can just grow and tell our additional stories. If you noticed, even Mother 2025, she asked all of those longtime missionaries, go home and write your autobiographies, write your memoirs. And so each of you and each of us has a story to tell. And I think let us harvest those stories, let them put it all together, surround True Parents' story with this greatest testimony. And to me, that's kind of not just what's happening now, it's also what do we leave behind? How does it look in 100 years? What does people know about us, about true parents, about the disciples, about, as a Jewish and Israeli, I have clear understanding of what happened in our history. And I hope our future generations, unification is born or unification is joining, will have the same sense of history and understanding of this foundation. So that's my closing remark. And again, it was really a pleasure, but it is an ongoing pleasure because we're not really done, as we know. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tal, and also to each of my colleagues. Before I turn it back to Dr. Walsh, I would like to recognize our two additional editors who are not part of the panel tonight. Dr. Frank Kaufman, he is editor-in-chief of the New World Encyclopedia, director of the Interreligious Federation for World Peace, and very active in many peace-based initiatives. He's been deeply involved with ecumenism and interfaith at the highest level for years. So Dr. Kaufman brought a finely tuned spirituality to the project, and in some ways he was our chaplain, connecting what we were doing to true parents and God's heart in our deliberations. And he also has a doctorate in history. Larry Moffat has been associated with our movement's media initiatives for some 50 years as a leader of the World Media Association, Tiempos del Mundo, the Washington Times Foundation. He's one of our movement's in my opinion, he's one of our movement's most gifted writers. He has a great sense for words and nuances of meaning. So he brought that talent to the project, especially when we labored over word choices in different entries. So thank you, Larry. So Dr. Walsh, that would conclude our remarks, and I'll turn the floor back to you.
Excellent, Dr. Mickler, and all of you as speakers. I think we can, Myung Sun, we can have everybody on screen in terms of the Dr. Mickler and the three commentators, and we've got quite a lot of action in the chat column. And if you can unmute, I'm going to call on a couple of them. Beginning, I think I'll first ask Richard Lewis, followed by Dr. Wilson, just to make your comment questions. Please be as brief as possible. We're already at the 1 hour point, and I'd also ask restraint in the responses so that we can allow a little participation from our audience. So, Richard, you want to make a couple of comments?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I hope that in the historical record, all the accomplishments of Dr. and Mrs. Durst of the Oakland Church and the number of members who came through that portal to the New World will be recorded in history. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Point taken. I've been anxious to do an account of the Oakland family, which was one of the most interesting communitarian undertakings of the 1970s and into the 1980s.
I would never have joined anywhere else except the Unification Church in Oakland, California, Boonville in the farm and all that.
Okay, Dr. Wilson, got a few excellent comments.
I have a few questions. So first question, I think you've already answered in the affirmative. I said, have you considered, in order to expand the record by orders of magnitude, creating a digital version with links to all the speeches, instructions, documents, and photos related to each day? It sounds like that's where you're headed, which I'm delighted about. The second one is more interesting. One of the issues, when I look at the Bible and I read the Gospels, it's not all Jesus' words. It's also Jesus' discussions with his disciples, his conversations with Peter, and even with Judas and other people who were important in Jesus' life. So I'm wondering if you're going to consider including more about like a father's disciples and his conversations with his disciples. Because conversations are important. Father is not just alone. True parents, father and mother, are not just alone. They're in a milieu. And that's my most important question. Then my last one is to Dr. McDevitt. What relics from Barrytown, if any, are being preserved in the East Garden Museum? We had a letter from God, a big granite monument that somehow didn't get claimed. I have sitting on my property True Parents bench that David S.C. Kim inscribed, and that was sitting in at the pond area, and nobody wanted it, so I have it in my backyard. I don't want to keep it there, but at least for now, I feel like I'm a custodian of a relic. But I think that really doesn't belong to me. I just custodian of it. And then the last one was, I was in the New York church during the days when we would meet in Queens. I forget the name of the house over there in Queens, where Father would sometimes meet with the local church leaders, and I was in a couple of those meetings. In fact, I was chastised severely by Father during one of those meetings. It's one of the more memorable occasions of my life. So I'm wondering how the coverage is of Father's work with the New York churches in the early 70s. So those are my comments.
Any brief response?
Well, the conversations of True Father would be challenging, partially from a linguistic standpoint. How many of those conversations would have been in English, and how would we have access to it? Would be quite a challenge. I know that you have expressed interest before in a authorized edition of all of Father. You said it's not just speeches of Jesus, but conversations. But I know you have lobbied for an authorized edition of Father's speeches, in which they could all be carefully gone through and edited appropriately. Dr. Walsh, I know that HJI has a repository in Westchester where a lot of materials have gone. If you'd like to speak to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this project spills over into the archives of HJI and UTS, which we're excited about as well. We had a kind of a trial run, Dr. Lagratieri and I and others, putting together a UPF archive. So this is really a task, along with memoirs, as you said, Dr. Mickler, and I remember you mentioning that moment where you heard Father talk about keeping records in addition to evangelism or propagation. But I think this is a very, very important task for posterity, not only our individual memoirs, but this kind of public memoir and commemoration. Maybe we can move on just to give a few more of our audience to say a brief word. Dr. Selliver, and then Donna, Avi, and Margaret Sisterson.
Well, thank you, Dr. Walsh, and thank you to Dr. Mickler and to the whole team for this wonderful work. My question was, in some ways, a simple one, and maybe I received a short answer from Dr. Famularo about business visits, business-related business visits. I know this is a somewhat controversial topic in terms of the record. At least it has been. There was a time when there was a publication of all of Father's business titles that was actually problematic. And I just wondered, because it is part and parcel of the Messianic work. And I just wondered if there's anything of that nature. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and hear from the others, and then I think we'll probably just wrap up with final comments that can include responses to some of these points. Donna, you want to make a comment, then Margaret?
Hello, I'm Donna Avey, and I didn't intentionally comment when we first started the meeting tonight. I didn't plan to speak, but maybe you want to know, we've been working a similar project. I was asked to work with Reverend Krishnik of SR5 as he was moving out of the position, and Kevin Thompson came into the position. Reverend Thompson mobilized us to start looking at the history of Alaska's relationship to true parents. So that's how we got in touch with Dr. Mickler in the beginning stages, or in the middle of his process. And we're in a transition period ourselves. I joined to become a student at HJI just to learn how to source everything, to learn the correct procedures and the correct guidelines to give to the posterity. We've documented our process, and I'm putting together my final paper for the third course in HJI and research methods on our True Parents in Alaska project. I can't tell you how time-taking it is, but how grateful I am that the last relics of my life are in my bedroom, in my office with me here, on all the journals I made and every tiny little piece of paper I kept. I'm protecting it.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I spoke too long.
No, it was very good. Margaret?
Hello, everyone. It's just, I remember in the holidays, after each performance, true parents would gather the performing arts people, I think on the 33rd floor, and he would say many things regarding the arts. So that would be nice to be able to gather that information. As we are interested in worship, building for the church, it's important to have that background too. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. You're in Palau?
Yes.
Okay. We'll all come there for our next meeting. Dr. Mickler referred to the chaplain of this group. I think Dr. Kaufman is on the webinar. Frank, if you are there and can say a brief word, we'd welcome that.
Thanks very much, Dr. Walsh. Hi everybody, the old team that I used to visit all the time, waving. Yeah. I thought that I might get a word, and the word I'd offer is, I believe that God is interested in preserving the sacred history of his time on earth with the presence of true parents. And I believe God is interested in advancing the providence forward. So what I'd like to recommend, because a huge number of people on the calls, it's thrilling, is if there's something that in your own heart that you believe can do one or the other, either preserve the record of God's time on earth with true parents and us, or advance the providence, just please start and find a handful of friends, and you will be absolutely amazed at the miraculous reality that will start to come down on you. That's what this chronology project was. It yielded, and Tal referenced it, it yielded miracle after miracle after miracle. Every moment of the work, we could feel the presence of God. And the other thing is that it built a very peculiar team in which there's such a subtle and precise nature of each contributor. Dr. Mickler is an exact type, Franco, Tal, each one. And Dr. Mickler referenced that when he described Larry's, he described the talents of each one. And I would just like to recommend to everybody on the call, start something up, find a few friends, and God will provide the exact combo to really bring success, no matter how big or how small. So thanks. That's what I thought to say if there was going to be time. Thank you.
Oh,
He's our
beautiful.
chaplain. He's our chaplain.
He is.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kaufman. So, Dr. Mickler and your team, however, but if you kindly keep it brief, just final closing comments. I'm sorry for those, a lot of good stuff in the chat from David Eaton, Pauline Eby, and other good friends who I'm delighted have joined us this evening, and others.
Well, I'd like to refer back to the quotation from the book of John, in which were all the things that Jesus did recorded, the world would not hold all the books. So everyone's asking, well, what about business visits? What about the arts? What about Oakland? What about Barrytown? Yes. Everything we could get our hands on, we used. And however, we were basically limited to the printed record. On occasion, we did accept oral testimony if we felt if it was reliable. One area, however, Dr. Silver, one area we didn't penetrate all that well was Vegas. And I know you're in Vegas, Dr. Silver, so help us out and get us some records from out there if you would. That could help add to our chronology.
Anyone else a final word?
I think just we were happy to be here and share a little bit of that story of how it came about.
Yeah,
Not just the book itself, but the entire process.
I appreciate the thought of having the faculty roundtable spotlight this project. I really appreciate it. I'm not a faculty member. I'm a student, and I hope I'm a good one. And I think it's good. I hope we can do this again, Dr. Walsh, because it's an ongoing project, and there's going to be more coming.
We'll check with Dr. Silver about how you're doing in his course.
I'll just say that I encourage you to get the text, and I'm sure for all of those of you who had questions or who have an interest in this, I'm sure you'll find things that you remember that aren't there, and this can supplement what we've done. And like I said, chronologies never end, and there will always be something to add. Some of you were at breakfast with true parents. Some of you were fishing with true parents. For those of us that had that experience, I wish I had a video recorder back then. I wish I had a recorder in my pocket, but then we didn't have those things back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. This is a recent thing. So through the chronology, you can be stimulated to remember many stories from your own life, and you can send them to Tal, and Tal will compile them for sure and bring it up to the meeting. Thank you.
I see Dr. Spurgeon here. Sorry, I didn't see you earlier. Please, Dr. Spurgeon, say a word. Former president.
Just one quick point is there was a fire in the old garage at East Garden in the 1970s. Daikon Onuki, who was father's driver all over America in the 70s, was also the photographer. So unfortunately, those photos, thousands of them, were destroyed. So what I'm suggesting is many of us have taken photos, so we need to send those photos to this team. So those are an important document beyond the words, showing in reality where true parents were and what they were doing. But I thank everyone for this wonderful session. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Spurgeon. Dr. Mickler, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I would just again thank you, Dr. Walsh, for hosting this roundtable and for allowing us to present our research over the last 5.5 years, and thank everybody for attending. Yeah, if you do have anything to add, please send it to us. If you find any mistakes in the chronology, let us know as well. A few people have pointed out a couple of mistakes, and this is a print-on-demand book text. So actually, someone pointed out an unfortunate repetition in one space, and we're able to correct those. And it doesn't help you if you've bought an earlier one that has the mistake in it, but the next person to buy will get one that has that.
But Dr. Mickler, if you have a coin that has a little error in it, it's rare. It's hugely valuable at this time. So
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah. But,
all right, thank you, everyone. Maybe Youngson.
I want to thank true parents most of all for everything that they've given to this nation and the world.
Amen. Aju. Youngson, you could kind of put everybody in gallery and people can just go off mute and say hi to each other. And thank you all for coming. Yeah, great turnout tonight. Beautiful. And our thoughts and hearts and prayers to True Mother. Yeah. Hi, George Ogurier. You have to get to bed soon.
Oh, yes. It's after 2 o'clock here. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, it's a great meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
On a chronology of African movement.
Oh, sure. We're working on that.
We all thank Dr. Walsh thank Dr. Walsh for moderating us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Tal, for
Labor of love. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dr. Walsh.